project was born from a singular vision, a clarity that only comes when you cut away the noise and trust your own voice. Wyatt stood on the brightly lit stage, his silhouette sharp against the enormous screen bearing the logo for the National Design Innovator Awards. The glare of a spotlight caught the gold trophy in his hand, a blinding sliver of light that made me squint. He smiled that easy, predatory smile, the one that had once felt like sunshine. The audience, a sea of black tie figures, applauded politely. I remained perfectly still at my table in the back of the cavernous ballroom. My response, spoken to no one but myself, was a whisper. I have the receipts. We met in a brutalist cathedral. Not a real one, but a university library in Toronto so monolithic and imposing it felt sacred. I was a third-year architecture student, hunched over a drafting table, and he was a visiting lecturer, all charisma and well-worn leather jacket. He'd leaned over my shoulder, pointing to a detail in my schematic. Your line work is fearless, he'd said. We spent the next 4 hours talking about concrete, light, and the emotional weight of a well-placed void, finishing the night sharing a plate of fries at a 24-hour diner. That was the good memory, the smell of vinegar and cheap coffee, the feeling of being truly seen. The first red flag came a month later. We agreed to collaborate on a competition entry. He presented my initial concept sketches to a panel as our joint ideas, but the way he said it, my vision, which Zara helped render, was a subtle theft, a quiet repositioning of the creative hierarchy. I told myself I was being sensitive. He was the one with the industry connections. It was for the good of the project. I let it go. It was easier than confronting the flicker of unease that had settled deep in my gut. The next 2 years were our golden period. We launched a small firm, Karim and Thorne, and landed a breakthrough project, the Oakhaven Community Center. Those were the good days, fueled by blue bottle coffee and late nights in our shared studio, the air thick with the scent of printing paper and possibility. I was the engine, the one lost for days in Revit and AutoCAD, obsessing over HVAC systems and material stress tolerances. Wyatt was the face. He wooed clients, networked at galas, and translated my complex structural plans into beautiful, digestible narratives. I did the work, he told the story, and for a while it worked. Bring me takeout from that Thai place on Queen Street, rub my shoulders as I finalized a rendering, and tell me we were an unstoppable team. The cracks started as hairline fractures. He'd forget to transfer my half of a client deposit for a few weeks. He'd take a meeting with a developer and brief me on it afterward, always omitting a few key details. I rationalized it all. He's just disorganized with money. He's protecting me from the boring business stuff. Exploitation was a slow creep, a gradual reallocation of credit and capital that I willfully ignored because our dream was finally taking shape. The moment of clarity came not from a confrontation, but from a glitch. Wyatt's laptop crashed, and he asked to use mine to send an urgent email. While he was in the washroom, a notification banner for a cloud storage app I didn't recognize popped up on my screen. It read, Valerius Group Pitch Deck Final WT Solo. My blood went cold. WT Solo. I clicked. It was a password-protected folder, but the file names were visible. Solstice Tower Concept Renderings. Thorne Portfolio 2023. Project Oakhaven Lead Architect Bio. That night I started digging. For 3 weeks I became a forensic accountant of our shared life. I used a data recovery program on our old server backups. I cross-referenced my cloud drive's version history with his calendar appointments. I found the original contract drafts he'd deleted, where we were listed as equal partners, and compared them to the final versions he'd filed, where I was designated as senior designer under his sole proprietorship. The betrayal wasn't just about Oakhaven. He had systematically built a solo career, a ghost portfolio, using the foundation of my labor, my ideas, my fearless line work. Breaking point was a Tuesday morning pitch for the Solstice Tower, the Valerius Group's new flagship skyscraper. It was a career-making project, and I had poured 600 hours into the proposal. The night before, Wyatt told me I didn't need to come. He said, "You look exhausted. I can handle this. It's just a formality." But I knew. I went anyway, slipping into a seat at the back of their glass-walled boardroom on the 54th floor. Witness was a senior vice president named Ms. Sterling, a woman with steel gray hair and an expression that could cut glass. Wyatt, looking impeccable in a custom suit, was magnificent. He moved through my renderings, my structural innovations, my design philosophy with the seamless confidence of a master storyteller. Then Ms. Sterling interrupted him. "Your partner, Ms. Karim. Her technical work on the Oakhaven project was impressive. What has her role been here?" Wyatt didn't even pause. Gave a small, indulgent laugh. "Zara is a wonderful assistant, a great hand with the software. She's fantastic at execution. But for a project of this magnitude, you need an architect, not a technician. This design from foundation to spire is mine." The world went silent. All I could hear was the low hum of the building's ventilation system. He didn't just steal my work, he tried to erase my identity. In that sterile, climate-controlled room, my plan began to form. And I remembered a tiny, overlooked detail. In his haste to copy my presentation files, he hadn't just copied the images. He had copied the source files. Every single one had my digital signature, my initials, Z.K., embedded in the metadata, a permanent, invisible fingerprint. My first call was to Veronica Stone, an intellectual property lawyer whose name I got from a university alumni directory. Her retainer was $15,000, nearly all of my savings. Over the next 2 months, we built our case. My apartment became a war room, walls covered in printouts of emails, transaction logs, and file histories. Were moments of sheer terror. One afternoon, leaving Veronica's office, I saw Wyatt walking down the street. I ducked into a bookstore, my heart hammering against my ribs, and pretended to inspect a collection of poetry until he passed. The evidence was irrefutable, a fortress of facts. We had 874 timestamp design files from my personal cloud drive, proving origination. We had the file metadata with my ZK initials on the Solstice Tower pitch. Had text messages where Wyatt admitted, "You're so much better at the grunt work than me, thank God." We had transaction records showing I personally paid the $8,000 annual license for the specialized 3D rendering software we used. We even had a sworn affidavit from a freelance coder I'd hired to write a custom plugin for AutoCAD, who confirmed he had only ever corresponded with me. The ironic coincidence came from the Oakhaven project itself. In the final blueprints for the building's cornerstone, I had hidden a small, stylized engraving of a star jasmine flower, my grandmother's favorite. I had the original pencil sketch of it in my old notebook, dated a year before I ever met Wyatt. Veronica's strategy was brilliant. We would let him win the National Design Innovator Award for Oakhaven. We would let him climb onto that stage and claim it as his singular vision. His public acceptance would be his public confession, locking him into the lie in front of the entire industry. And so I sat in the ballroom, watching him bask in his stolen glory. After the ceremony, I found him by the bar, holding his trophy like a scepter, surrounded by admirers. I approached him, my expression unreadable. "Wyatt, you have a moment to discuss our partnership." His smile was condescending. "Z, really? Not tonight, we're celebrating." His eyes flickered past me, searching for someone more important to talk to. Then he saw Veronica Stone standing a few feet behind me, holding a sleek leather folio. Bravado in his face curdled instantly into confusion, then a sickening, pale panic. Veronica stepped forward. "Mr. Thorne, this is a summary of 874 timestamped files, 112 emails, and 3 sworn affidavits proving Ms. Karam's sole authorship of the Oakhaven project." I spoke next, my voice low and steady. "You also submitted the Solstice Tower proposal to Valerius Group. Did you remember to scrub the metadata from the renderings, Wyatt?" My initials are on every file. And Miss Sterling, who I've been speaking with for the past month, is right over there. She's very interested in intellectual property integrity. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open, the golden trophy looking suddenly cheap and heavy in his hand. He looked like a man who had just watched the ground vanish from beneath his feet. All that self-assured charisma was gone, replaced by the hollow-eyed terror of a cornered fraud. "Enjoy your award," I said. "The last thing you'll ever get from my work." The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Within 24 hours, the story was on every major architecture blog. The awards committee officially rescinded his win, citing a severe breach of professional ethics. Valerius Group issued a public statement formally ending their consideration of Thorne Architecture for the Solstice Tower project. I ignored 47 frantic calls from him, his parents, and our mutual acquaintances. The lawsuit was settled out of court. Wyatt, facing irrefutable proof and public disgrace, had no choice. Judgment was for $145,000, my calculated share of past profits, and a conservative estimate of my stolen intellectual property value. The settlement included a court-enforced public apology, printed in the industry's leading trade journal, and a permanent injunction preventing him from ever associating his name with my work again. 6 months later, a friend sent me a screenshot from a professional networking site. It was a photo of Wyatt. He was working as a junior draftsman for a small suburban firm that designed strip malls. In the picture, he was hunched over a tiny desk under the flat, unforgiving glare of fluorescent lights, a ghost haunting the edges of the industry he'd tried to conquer. My own view is different now. My new studio, Karam Design, overlooks the city from the 32nd floor. It's small, but it's mine. Last week, I signed the contract to be the lead architect for the Solstice Tower. The calm I feel isn't vengeful. It's the quiet satisfaction of a foundation that has been properly rebuilt. A journalist from a design magazine asked me last week what drove my creative process. I looked out the window at the skyline, a canvas of steel and glass. My work is born from a singular vision, a clarity that comes when you trust your own voice. He was just noise, and I finally cut him away.